how much does, that, the popularization and kind of mainstreaming of online and blended teaching, how much potential does that have to change the way we think about brick and mortar teaching?
I think it's, on some level, I think it's unlimited. I think the trick is, what concerns me is that unless, in my opinion, for what it's worth, unless that is accompanied by talk of critical pedagogy, unless that is talk about a pedagogical shift, then it's just a tool, right? I mean, we can create, asynchronous discussion forums to discuss really traditional teaching, and that happens, right? I mean, and I remember doing a site visit of a school that had just modernized their whole building, and I sat in a science classroom that had this beautiful new whiteboard and what have you, and I talked to the teacher afterwards, and I said, well, tell me why you like this. Tell me how technology has transformed the way you teach. She goes, oh, it's wonderful. Every night I go home, I prepare my lecture notes into a PowerPoint slide. I can just give it up there. It's got all these wonderful transitions. The kids love it. And the kids never touched it. It never hit their hands. She created a really nice blackboard, And so unless to me, the potential lies in that we now can create this space and time for true conversations of pedagogy. And that to me creates an unlimited, you look at the EdChat stuff, you look at some of the Twitter talk, you look at K-12 online, and you look at how things like EduCon or the conference that Eric just did last week, or EduBloggerCon, or any of those things. You look what happened last night on Illuminate, where we had 400 people listening to Alfie Kohn, Deb Meyer, and Diane Ravitch, and me, which was weird. But those conversations can happen now. But it has to have a pedagogical backbone, or we're just going to replicate what we've always had, only with shiny tools.
Do you have a sense of when you deliver speeches about what you think is important and kind of what you stress both at SLA and with other schools, do you have a sense of what ideas are gaining more traction than others and why?
Well, yeah. Well, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I certainly think the cell phone policy is one that is going to change, because I think everybody knows they're losing the battle, right? It's creating policy that is bad policy because it's not being enforced, and the worst thing we can do is teach kids that the best thing you can do is skirt the rule. And we want to me, in my opinion, you have as few rules as possible in schools. You teach kids to honor the behavior, to act in such a way that is respectful and smart, and then rules come into play only when they really have to. Like, for example, one of the rules at SLA is you can't ride the elevator because it breaks all the time. Dumb, but it is. So I think that the cell phone policy is low-hanging fruit, and so I think that probably people are listening to that idea. I think, though, that the idea of true project-based learning and inquiry-driven learning is gaining traction, and I think part of the reason is that there is a sense that these tools are more powerful, and teachers are using these tools, and they're transforming their work habits and their process and the way they do their jobs. And the way we live our lives, 15 years ago, nobody bought anything online. Today, nobody doesn't. And so I think people understand that these are transformative technologies, and they're changing the way they do their processes, and so they're going to apply that to kids. But I think they've got to do it wisely, and I think that too often it's scattershot, and too often it's isolated. And hopefully, what people hear when they hear me speak is that we can do this thoughtfully as institutions, and institutions can change, as opposed to putting it all on that one teacher in the building who blogs or whatever.